on Twitter. Okay, GM, everyone. Today we're joined by Robin Obermeyer, the CEO and co-founder of Liquidium, which you know is the first ordinals lending platform on Bitcoin L1. But before we get into that, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Albert, CEO of Bitcoin Startup Lab. Welcome to the Who's Who and a founder's journey into Bitcoin interview series. The reason why we've come together as a community to do this is to celebrate innovation and significant achievements on Bitcoin so that we reinforce and grow the innovation culture on Bitcoin. Significant achievements on Bitcoin are things that were done for the first time ever or setting new records to push forward the innovation frontier of Bitcoin. This show is brought to you by the Bitcoin Startup Lab, a top pre-accelerator on the Bitcoin ecosystem, helping you turn your ideas into investment-worthy startups, and BTC Inc., parent company of Bitcoin Magazine, the top media on Bitcoin, and Crypto Slate, a crypto-agnostic media platform that brings the latest happenings on Bitcoin to the rest of the crypto world. And of course, a big thank you to all our teams and all the guest speakers that have come together to make this show possible and accelerate the advent of the Bitcoin economy. So again, today our special guest is Robin Obermeyer. He is the CEO and co-founder of the first ever ordinals lending protocol on Bitcoin L1. Hi, Robin. How are you doing?
GM, I'm doing good. Thanks for inviting me here.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. We're going to do something different on the show, right? And as we mentioned offline, we're going to be sharing your founder's origin story, right? And thank you so much for being willing to share that, because we'd like to inspire more founders and builders to come to Bitcoin to innovate. So how about we start from the top?
Yeah, sounds great. I'm ready.
Yeah. So we already know each other for over a year now, right, Robin? I think when we first meet, it was I think it's April, right, of last year.
Yeah, exactly. It was I think in April of last year. So kind of in the start of the beginning of the summer. I can still remember like all of the sessions where we the sessions from the Bitcoin Startup Lab. They were great. I was like chilling in the garden because the weather was nice and just listening to all of these great great meetings and great speakers and so on. So yeah, was definitely so good to have this started in April.
Well, now that I hear that you're listening to the classes in the garden, maybe we should recommend all the new students to watch the classes from the garden, seeing that you graduated one of the top teams from our program.
Oh yeah, I can highly recommend it. It's good. Like touch some grass while you're working. I think that's the best thing you can do.
There you go. Get grounded with nature. And in fact, our program is actually the scientific process, right, around the natural progression of a startup. So I think that does make sense. So before you joined us, I remember you had launched a NFT collection, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we started on like I guess that's almost like 2 years ago when we started like conceptualizing all of the NFT stuff.
Okay.
That was kind of the first entry into like building on stacks, I think.
Okay, so that's 2 years ago, and let's just give everyone an idea. How old were you then, 2 years ago?
That was when I was should be 19.
Wow. Okay, so you were 19 back then. Were you already working for Apple already?
At that time, yes. Yeah, I was working at Apple at that time. Kind of, just
Okay. So let's before we dive into that, right? Because this is just to get everyone's bearings on sort of like the timeline and what you're doing at that time before you went all in to become a founder. Now before that, can you share, like, maybe summarize like how old are you when you did your first side hustle? Like I remember you mentioned some side hustles. I thought those were really interesting. Do you care to share those?
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess the first time that you could call it a side hustle was when I think I was 12 at that time. So I was essentially like watching a bunch of YouTube Let's Plays and so on. I think every kid does that. And yeah, we like, I think what always fascinated me is that like the design of it and like how people were actually like building a brand with their like their name on it and so on. And obviously a big part of this was like thumbnails, banners, and just like the design aspect of their whole channel. So I started digging into like Photoshop and so on. Started to learn how to design these things, and then kind of yeah, I think I had like a Pirate of the Caribbean version of Photoshop, if you know what I mean. Because at that time, like I was broke. But yeah, then I kind of reached out to some YouTubers that I knew and asked them if they wanted to have like a thumbnail or banner or something. So I can like do it for them to kind of learn. And also like this kind of turned into my first side hustle because at some point I started like charging them a little bit. But yeah, was just like some
Okay,
additional
so this
pocket
is this
money.
is like this is really interesting to me. So you took the initiative, right? So you're captivated by YouTube, right? About how people are creating like their own IP and their own brand around themselves, and then you saw opportunity around creating banners for them, right, to help them promote themselves. Now, what compel like okay, so a lot of people would probably say, "Oh, that's interesting. Let me just watch YouTube." Okay, and then maybe even like uh create a YouTube themselves. But what compelled you to actually take the initiative and reach out to these people? What was going through your mind?
Um, yeah, I think like I had a couple of friends at that time that like were doing some Minecraft Let's Plays or whatever. And yeah, then I just like I also tried this myself, but I didn't like to be like this YouTube Player and so on. Wasn't really my kind of or the thing that I like to do. But I
Uh,
was like caught on the design part of it, so I just started like designing all of these things for my friends first, and then kind of they knew some people that I didn't know that were also doing YouTube. They reached out to me and so on. And then like at some point after like doing 5 designs or something, I said like, okay, let's just charge like $15 or something to kind of afford a new game on Steam or something. So this was kind of how I was using it. It was just like, okay, I know there's like I wanted to buy this game. It costs $20. So let's just charge $20 so I can get it for free essentially.
I
So
get
yeah.
it. All right, yeah, you actually read my mind. That was actually my next question. Like, what compelled you to charge? And now I know it's because you wanted to buy another game on Steam. So, I totally understand that. I totally understand that. When you're 12, you know, your priorities are different from like when they're now, right? But that's interesting. So that sounds like, you know, a lot of kids have allowance. So, am I correct to assume that you didn't have allowance, so you decided to get creative to make money so you can buy Steam games? Like what was the dynamic there? I'm just curious.
Um I guess I always like my parents are super supportive, but I always wanted to kind of do the things like my way or like not depend on other people. So yeah, it wasn't that my parents were like not giving me anything or something. It was more like I just wanted to earn it myself, kind of.
So when
So
you're
yeah.
12, wow, okay. And where can you can you trace back to the point where you just want to earn it yourself? Or was there like a catalyst that made that happen? Do you still remember how that happened, or was it just something that was like part of you as long as you could remember?
Um, I that's hard to say. Like I think it was just always some like I think especially with things where I knew okay my parents weren't like exactly happy that I was doing this, then I thought okay then it would be like kind of ridiculous if my parents would pay for it if they don't really want it. And things same things with like games and so on. It was like yeah cool, my parents were like okay whatever, like you can play them but we don't really support it, and we want you to do other stuff as well. So then I think it would be kind of weird to just use their money to pay for things that they don't really want, you know
Ah,
what I mean?
I get it. I get it. All right. All right. So you respected their wishes and you came up with a creative solution. Okay, excellent. Excellent. So how long did that last for until you moved on to your next side hustle?
I think it was about 2 years when I started like getting into phone repairs and so on. So that was when I was about 14.
Okay, so
Um,
so you went from digital graphic design for 2 years to hardware repair on cell phones.
yeah, at that time I was
All
really
right.
fascinated by hardware.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do a summary of that. How'd that business work out?
Yeah, so essentially like I think I broke my phone once, and then I wanted to know how I can repair it. So I watched some YouTube videos about it and bought like yeah a replacement screen, and then it was like a kit where some screwdrivers and so on were included. And then I followed this video tutorial uh to replace my screen, and I figured out it was like pretty easy actually. So it's not a ton of work, but nobody really like dares to repair their phone because they fear that like something will be broken after that. And I totally get that point. I broke a couple of phones, but I think yeah, it was in the beginning like okay, now I know how to repair a phone. So if anyone else like then kind of a friend of mine broke their phone, and I was like uh yeah, I know how to repair it, like should I repair it for you? You just have to like pay for the screen, instead of them running to Apple and paying like 5 times the price. So yeah, I think that's kind of what
Interesting.
drove
So
it.
let me ask you a question. So I'm guessing, did this phone repair service make more money than the banner digital graphic one?
Yes, I think yeah, definitely that.
So, all right. So, as any good founder would, you're making more time with, you're making more money with less time, right? Excellent, excellent. So, what? How much more was it? Do you still remember? I know it's been a few years now, but
Yeah, I think like the difference is that way more people need to have their phones repaired because like all
uh,
of my friends broke their phones. And also for like for example a banner, it took me like 2 hours 3 hours or something to come up with something usable, and I was charging like 10, 15, $20 or something, which is like really not a lot. And with the phone, it was like, okay, you repair the screen. If you have done it like 5 times already or 10 times, then you really know how it how it works. You don't have to watch like a new video or something. And it is like a matter of like 15 minutes. And then you get like $20 for 15 minutes. And that's like much more than $20 for 3 hours of work.
I'm getting it. So at a very young age, you are already realizing that, okay, use less time to make the same money and be in a business where there's a high frequency where the problem is happening. Excellent. I love it. I love it. I love it. So how long did that last?
Yeah, so first I was doing it on my own, as I said, to like a couple of friends. Then essentially after that, friends of friends, friends of my family, and yeah, was like more and more people. At some point, I started like handing out flyers in my school, and yeah, at that time also it was like a little bit overwhelming for just myself. So I essentially taught a friend of mine how to do these repairs as well, and then he joined me, and we kind of split the work, split the revenue. um I wouldn't call him an employee, but more like a co-founder. If that's like
Okay.
any like if you would want to put any title behind that. But yeah, it was just like two friends repairing a couple of phones for friends, and making like a
How big
little
was
bit
your
of pocket
school?
money.
How many people were in your school? How many kids?
It was like 600 people, 700, something like that.
Oh, okay. So the two of you, it was too much business for you, but then you brought in a co-founder. You trained them up like a true founder would.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So this is you got all this experience when you're 14.
Yeah, this was more like 15. So when
All right, so
I
okay,
kind
so
of
this
made it
was for a
into a
year.
bigger
Okay,
thing.
14 and
Yeah.
okay, right. Okay. So a year later you had to expand the business. Okay, all right. And then how long did that last until your next hustle or your next
Yeah, I think until I
project?
was like 16 or something like that. So about 2 years in total.
Okay, so look, I mean, especially for guys, right? I think once we hit like what 13, 14, we're not really thinking about like work or stuff like that. We're usually thinking about girls, right? At that age. Yeah. I mean, did you just say like let's not I don't want to date. I just want to do my business. Like what was like I'm sure you had that, had to make those decisions, right? What was the what were you thinking? I'm curious.
Dude, you don't know how good it is to kind of like date people when you're repairing phones, because literally like 80% of my customers were girls, because they were like just dropping their phones all the time. And then yeah, it was kind of a reason to meet up, I think.
So there's like all right, so you actually were even more efficient. Okay. All right. All right. So that was actually you didn't have to like spend extra time. It was just like part of making money and do your business you would meet. Yeah, okay, I get it now. All right. So you didn't have to sacrifice anything. Great. Awesome. So what happened after that? What happened after 16? Was your next project?
Yeah, I think like apart from working at some uh like smaller jobs, for example, one IT job where I was like building computers and um setting up like Wi-Fi or something at people's homes. I also worked at like a pupil, or like as a school coach kind of, where yeah, I helped the little people with their homework and stuff like that. Um
Okay. Uh,
and yeah, sorry, go ahead.
let me ask. Let's pause there for a second. So you started helping people set up the computers Wi-Fi. Now, how many of these were already your customers from your phone fixing business?
Oh, that was like none of them, because
Oh, no,
I
no.
worked for another guy for that. So this was
Oh,
like a
okay.
business that I was employed.
Oh, okay. All right. So you said, all right. Um, like what was the decision, right? I mean, I guess now you don't have to do your own marketing and sales, right? But what was the decision for, running your own business to working for somebody else? I'm guessing they paid you more money, but what's I'd like to hear from you. What's the reason for switching over?
I think just to get some more experience, because like he has done it for like 20 plus years or something. I knew him, so it was kind of like, okay, I'm into tech. He has like a tech job, I guess. So yeah, it was kind of uh I guess having, or like to make the experience, and also to have something like to have someone who I can learn from.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so you did that and the other thing, and then where are we now on the timeline? 17, 18?
Yeah, I think this was kind of simultaneously to the phone repair.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Oh, okay. Oh, so you're doing all these things at the same time.
uh, sorry.
So you're doing all these things at the same time, like the phone repair and working to set up computers and their internet at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. All right. So what was the next thing after that?
So after that, yeah, I think then working at like for the like pupils coach thing. So it was kind of in a school where, yeah, I helped like the young the young pupils to with their homework and so on. So it was kind of also a side hustle. Um, but it was fun just to work with the people there and kind of to teach something, to learn how to like interact with like younger people and so on. And then yeah, this was pretty like close to finishing my school, which was in 2020. Um,
So let
yeah,
me ask you
was
a
20.
question. So okay, 2020, you're finished with high school, but how many you said there's like 600 kids at your school. How many of these people had side hustles versus like, people who are just not motivated by working yet?
Um, uh, that's a good question. I think some people worked at like a supermarket just to get some pocket money. But yeah, I guess that was the minority. I think not that many people worked in during that time.
Yeah, like well, for the people that had side hustles like you, right? Like this like little business, did you meet anybody else in your high school like that?
Yeah, I guess like the only one was the guy that I was doing the phone repair business then.
Your partner.
But besides
Okay.
that, know I don't know anyone.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Got it. All right. So then you graduate high school, you go to university, and is this when you get into Apple?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so for first I worked for my parents for a bit.
Uh,
So they have like their own company, and I was kind of reworking their website, starting from scratch there to set up their online shop, website, and so on. And then like yeah, shortly after that, like I think a month late, like I quit working for my parents, or like I wasn't working full time anymore, and then I kind of started working at Apple. First, I was still like partially helping my parents, but then I went to Apple full time. So that was, yeah, this time.
I like that. I like the story on how you got the job at Apple. Why don't you share that with the audience?
Yeah, it was kind of just the like because I had the experience with working on all of these phones and so on, and um, yeah, I guess everyone who knew me was calling me when they had like issues with their phones, with their iPhones specifically. And then like someone was in Barcelona in Spain, and they got their phone stolen, and I was like giving them the exact instructions of what they have to do. And then like she went to, and I also told her like, yeah, go to an Apple store, like ask them what to do, just to make sure. And she was like telling exactly what she did, and the guy was like, "Okay, that's literally perfect. The like who, you should start working at Apple." And she was like, "Oh yeah, I gotta forward this to Robin." And that's kind of what motivated me to apply for the job, and then yeah, I
Okay.
got
And
it.
how long were you working at Apple?
This was I think 6 months about. Yeah, because that's like when I was starting to work at Apple, I kind of got into NFTs and
Right.
crypto and everyting.
Okay, hold
So
on. So this
yeah.
is okay. So 2.5 years ago, you got into Apple as a university student. And was that full time or was that part time? What was that?
It was full time.
Okay, so you basically got into Apple, and this is for a lot of people, it's sort of like a dream job, right? To be able to work for Apple. Okay, and then you get in during university, right? Most people have to graduate, and then you quit. You quit, right? Why did you quit after 6 months? Like to many people, that's probably like they're like, as I mentioned, it's probably like their dream job or like a very big milestone in their career. But you just like, all right, 6 months. I mean, obviously it wasn't your thing. Otherwise, you would have stayed longer, right? So what was going through your mind?
Yeah, it was a little bit overwhelming for me because at that time, as I said, I got into NFTs and crypto and blockchain and everything, and I wanted to do something with it. And then like I have like one friend of mine, he is like big into art. He's like a great artist. And I was like, oh yeah, I just have to call him right now and ask him if we want to do like an NFT collection. Um, so yeah, I called him. Then we kind of started working together on this. This was like while I was working at Apple, and then as I said, I worked full time at Apple. Also was going to university at that time, and then I was kind of using my like when I was driving to Apple with the train, I was working in the train to my way to Apple, and then I was working in the breaks during like yeah during my Apple work, and then I was kind of doing the rest of my work when I was driving back with the train, and then when I was at home. So this was like when I used like the time that I used for the NFT collection, and it kind of worked out for a time, but then after like I guess a couple of months, it was just a little bit too much because I didn't do anything but sleeping and working. So I chose the NFT collection over Apple just because I thought like this is something that uh I can learn from, like I can I can have more impact in that work. Instead of at Apple, you're just like one really, really small uh piece of this whole like huge chain. Um and yeah, I think you don't really have like a big impact, at least in the position that I was in at Apple. So yeah, I didn't see my future there.
Okay, so that's very big difference from what other people think, right, Robin? Most people would probably think the NFT collection is high risky, and having like that stable job and paycheck from Apple is much better, right? And probably most people think, hey, if I'm at Apple, um, even if I leave, I could use the Apple name to get a better job in the future. But most people would probably think, and it's actually wrong, but most people will think wrongly that doing the entrepreneurial thing is actually less less impactful for the future. But like what was the feeling that you had working at the NFT collection that you did not have at Apple? Like what, like how did you like, why were you a contrarian? Can you sort of pinpoint that? If you can, please share it.
Yeah, so I think it was just like as I said, I I never had like the financial struggles or anything. At that time, I was still living at my parents' house, so I didn't have like a lot of expenses. So I really didn't need the money that I was getting from Apple. Um, and I think what was more important at that time for me is finding something that like feels meaningful to me, or something that I have like yeah, I have it in my own hands. And if it fails, it's my fault. If it if it is a success, it's also my fault. You know what I mean? Like I think I just like
well, yeah, no, I understand what you mean completely. we're,
yeah.
we're very similar in the sense that I also had my first side hustle when I was 11, 12. Definitely it's better to have your destiny in your own hands. But I think it might be intriguing to people who would rather go to Apple to see how we think. But I also think it's intriguing to us to
Yeah,
see what.
there were a couple like there were a lot of people that were like really kind of laughing at me when I told them like, yeah, I'm doing NFTs now,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I'm
of
going to
course, right?
quit
Yeah,
Apple.
yeah. And who are
Yeah,
these people? Were these like your high school friends or university friends or like people at
yeah,
Apple? Like, tell me
yeah,
about
yeah.
them.
Coworkers at Apple. I guess like yeah, but I was laughing with them. Like I was also not taking myself too seriously. Um, but yeah, was kind of like I know that this sounded really ridiculous, and I know that what I'm doing right now is still sounding somewhat ridiculous to some people. So I don't really like care too much about that. Um, but yeah, uh, like
Well, I mean, I
everyone,
think it goes with the territory to innovate or to do something for the first time in a emerging industry. Um, if people don't think it's ridiculous, then I don't think we're being innovative enough. You know what I mean? So I think it comes with the territory, right? They probably don't know that you raised over $500,000 now, right? And started a proper startup. They probably don't
yeah,
know this.
they don't have to know.
Yeah, well, they'll know when they see you in the media, right?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but okay, so let's keep moving forward. So you left Apple, went for the NFT, and that changed everything, right? Because you went to NFT, you were yeah, you're already like in the Stacks ecosystem, which is where the Bitcoin Startup Lab started off, right? We started in Stacks before we went full agnostic into all Bitcoin technologies, right? But at that time, it was sort of like that's when we crossed paths, right? You had already launched, I think, was it one or two NFT collections? It launched the first one, and then the second
Yeah,
one.
it was split into two parts. So there was like this OG collection that was like really limited pieces. I think only 25. And then we launched like the big collection after that. So it was like one collection split into two tranches, kind of.
All right, cool. All right, excellent, excellent. And then so what was the decision to come into the startup lab? Like, what was the idea at that time before you created Liquidium? Now we're getting into like the interesting stuff now.
Yeah, good question. So I think at that time when we were doing the NFTs, it was on Stacks. So Stacks was like really, I think it still is like a really small market with like low liquidity and so on. And there were like really good builders in the space. So that's why I inherently like, yeah, I really believed in the stack space just because of like the community and also the like it being tied to Bitcoin, which is kind of the mother chain, the most important chain, I think, in the industry. Um, but what we noticed is that there was like no financial infrastructure for NFTs. And obviously, like when you're doing stuff with NFTs, when you're kind of getting into blockchain and so on, you know about like all of the different, or you get to learn about all of the different opportunities for NFTs, which is like essentially making everything that is non-fungible in the real world, meaning all real estate, houses, licenses, certificates, and everything that is like unique and is not fungible can ultimately be an NFT. Um, and it makes sense to use the NFT technology for it just because it's like it reduces so much legal hurdles. And like if it were legal, completely. Like if everything would be done this way, it just would reduce notary costs, or lawyers and stuff like that, because you have like solid smart contracts. You have like this unique identifier and so on. Yeah. So I guess having this in mind, I was thinking, okay, cool. This is essentially the next billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar thing. So NFTs in general. So we need the same financial infrastructure that we kind of have in the real world. So the idea was always to build some sort of financial infrastructure for NFTs. And because I never built a company before, I didn't know exactly how to do it. Like I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos. I have incorporated the company that we were building the NFT collection from and so on. But like that was it. Like I didn't have a mentor at that time, besides maybe like my parents, who have owned this business since like, so like my family owns this business like since 250 years almost. So it's like,
Okay.
yeah, my dad isn't really in the like founder or like entrepreneurial scene anymore. So yeah, he was helping me a lot, but not from a entrepreneurial perspective. So yeah, that's why I joined the program, to learn how to build something from scratch.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's like a big endorsement. And let's just how did how did that transform you from doing what you're doing before to where you are now as a CEO of Liquidium and successfully raising your first round? I'm curious. I don't know if we ever did a deep dive into this, so I'm curious. Like, maybe we just do a couple of highlights, because I want to spend more time on Liquidium, your current project where you became the first ordinals lending protocol ever on Bitcoin L1. But let's this transition point is pretty important for your founder's journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think not a lot has changed actually, because I think you can't learn enough, or there's never a point in life probably where you feel like, okay, I know everything. And like I'm still way in the beginning of my journey. Uh, and it's always like every day I'm encountering something where I don't know how it should be done. And then I kind of try to find a way around it, learn from mistakes and so on, and just yeah, kind of grow in a way, like for me personally, I think. Um, so I I think not a lot has changed actually from when we initially got into the startup app. It's just that I like know much more myself now, so I can help others better. So if they have any questions, probably I have some good tips, because I already encountered this situation. But it's always about learning new stuff and improving every day, I think.
Okay, so that was a little counterintuitive to me, because you're basically saying the startup lab didn't really help you transform at all. But let's
It helped a lot. It helped a lot. But I learned a whole bunch there, and it actually got me to where I am right now. What I'm just saying is that like I think you never stop learning, and um yeah, this was like I wanted to know how to be a, a founder, and how to build a company where like that I can actually uh like I actually have a company that works, and investors are like want to invest, people want to use it and so on. And this was the first natural step to get me there. So it was like for sure, the biggest step that I took, that I am where I am right now. So no doubt. But I think like just it doesn't stop here. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it never really stops. The learning never really stops. But yeah, I mean, I would just to emphasize again for the audience, not since we're on this topic before we move on to Liquidium, is you know, like if you had to do it by yourself when you're doing an NFT, would you have landed on this idea and been able to make the network that you did in the same amount of time?
I think it wouldn't, like, it's
Yeah.
probably almost not possible to just like, yeah, do it without anyone else. It's always about, yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you met your CTO through our program, correct?
Exactly. I think like probably if it weren't for you, I probably have like I would have felt on my nose like at least 10 times more before I actually like maybe get a sense of like why it's failing. And like your program really helped with like knowing exactly how to do it and like what you have to kind of be aware of to actually build something that is
Yeah, I mean,
good. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, look, our program works for three reasons. You know, like the first reason is that uh one, there's a scientific way to build a startup. There just is. You know, we found through time that doesn't matter what area you're from, what industry you're from, or what culture you're from. If you're building a for-profit business that's innovative, there are certain milestones that must be reached, and that's the knowledge, right? But that knowledge, I think, if you work really hard, if you have the right connections, you could probably also get it. Maybe not in the same amount of time. Um, you'll probably end up spending 5 to 10 times longer to hack it yourself, right? And that's where the power of the mentors come in, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Then yeah, right. And then so that's like a white glove service. But then on top of that, if we wanted to build that same mentor or connection network, that would take years to build those connections, right? But we basically package it so we're working together, and in just a few months, people get those connections. But then the cherry on top, or maybe like part of the secret sauce, is that you're also going through the whole batch with other talented founders, right? And then so the three things working together, they create they create a boost in value where it saves you years and years of time, right? It's the science given to everyone in a very short amount of time. It's the coaching from the mentors and the network, and finally being around other talented people. Like the three combined, like you know, you could probably do this separately. Anyone could do it separately if you're motivated enough over a long period of time. But when you have those three things in a very concentrated time, in a very concentrated environment, special things happen, right? Like let's say, like, you know, if you had to fail 10 times before you realize these things, the market would have shifted dramatically by that time, right? But because you're able to rapidly make mistakes and get back up in a short amount of time, you're able to iterate to this project that became Liquidium and becoming the first ever ordinals lending protocol, right? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Like the environment that you are in, like when you are working with everyone who is like-minded, that's just like just one part of it, but it helps productivity by like 100-fold probably.
Yeah. And so let's go into Liquidium. Can you share with people how it evolved to this point? I think that's a really interesting journey, right? Because when you graduate a program, you had found a big pain point for people taking loans out for their NFTs, right? Because they didn't want to give up their NFTs. But then how did it evolve beyond that to becoming the first ordinals lending protocol?
So I think like one of the biggest lessons that we have learned at your program was that like be open to pivoting. Like actually don't marry your idea. Try to kind of stay distant and look at it like with an objective view. And if you find a reason to pivot or something like a bigger opportunity or something that you can do better, even if you like kind of are biased by your own ideas, then yeah, be open to pivoting. And that's essentially like what we try to take to heart. We actually started off like with an idea for an NFT swapping service where you could like swap one NFT for another one without any money involved. Turned out like the business model is really bad for this. So we kind of pivoted to this NFT lending service, which was kind of the first NFT lending service on Stacks at that time. Then I guess another big learning was the MVP approach to kind of cut down on features to launch it or to get to market as soon as or as fast as possible. So we tried to do that. Just like cutting down the Stacks NFT lending platform. And shortly after releasing the MVP, we heard about ordinals and it was like this, okay, this sounds cool. It's on layer 1 Bitcoin. So probably there is a big opportunity, especially like because it gets a lot of traction in the bear market. So it was kind of just looking at the opportunity, looking or talking to people from the ordinal space that were like really early and figuring out if we should do the pivot. And yeah, it was pretty quickly that we said, okay, let's do it. We have nothing to lose. We can shelve the Stacks NFT lending platform. But yeah, let's try it. Let's give it a shot. So yeah, that's how we got into ordinal lending now.
Let's go through that process, because there are other entrepreneurs and founders who are going to be listening to this, and I think you might be able to help them out if you're able to share some of these things, right? Because look, let's be honest, most people, when they see a new trend, a lot of people knew about the ordinals coming up. Okay, it was within our community, everyone knew about it, right? And a lot of people try to grab, like, go for it, right? Like, for example, Gamma try to go for it, unfortunately unsuccessfully. But like, what do you think? What do you think you did differently? Like, some people, they just say, oh, I want to keep doing my project because I just launched my MVP, right? And they might not be as flexible as you. We know now that adaptability and flexibility, right? Agility is one of the hallmarks of successful founders. And why were you and your team, right? And then you also have a team, right? So it's like a group of people that have to make this, several people making a decision together. How are you guys able to make that decision to pivot into ordinals away from Stacks, right? Although like Stacks liquidity at that time was quite low, but at least it was, that how much it is, right? But with ordinals, it's sort of like, even a lot of people, they either tried unsuccessfully, or they just, even now they're sitting on the sidelines. What allowed you guys to be so decisive and become the first to do what you're doing? I'm curious about that thought process there, right? I mean, let's be honest. When we spend so much time, I remember you guys worked very hard on the MVP, right? And you guys kept on cutting down the features until it became good enough to launch, right? That was several months for the first first version, right? And then to abandon that and to redo it, that must have, I want to know how you're able to do that. Most people can't.
Um, yeah, sorry, I think I was on mute before. So I think the weakness that we had, and we kind of realized that we have this weakness, is we had like a really small team. So naturally, if we are competing with someone else on like who can deliver it first, we are probably going to lose. So for example, like first natural thing for like, okay, we had ordinals. Now you had like all of the trades that were going on in the ordinal space were like over the counter. What do we need next? A marketplace. That was obvious. Everybody knew marketplaces will be the next thing that is coming to ordinals. And I think Gamma did great. Like they delivered so fast, went to market really fast and so on. But yeah, marketplaces, like it was in like 1 month or even a couple of weeks, like multiple, like 5 to 10 marketplaces were randomly popping up, because it was such an obvious thing to do. And yeah, when we started doing the ordinal lending service, so Liquidium, for ordinals, at that time there weren't any marketplaces. It was again this time where like people were trading over the counter, and we knew, okay, if you have marketplaces, if ordinals are similar to NFTs, then eventually the people will need NFT lending again. So essentially the same thing that we're doing on Stacks right now. So why not just build the first ordinal lending platform right now already? So then we can basically, as soon as marketplaces and everything already, we can try to go to market as soon as possible after that. So we don't essentially wait to see what happens. And yeah, that's kind of what we did here. I think, yeah, it obviously was a huge risk in the beginning because it's like way more stuff to build than just a marketplace. But yeah, we tried to get to market as soon as possible with like cutting down features and stuff like that. And yeah, just starting early, I think, was, or being prepared and then catching the opportunity, pivoting fast, and going to market quick was kind of how we are now the only ones to do ordinal lending.
Yeah, and you guys are doing great at it. So yeah, so in a sense, I mean, you sort of have to thank Stacks for it's basically all the business logic was the same, right? It's just like the back end coding you guys had to update and then focus your marketing towards ordinals, right? And then
Yeah, and also the Stacks community is like so supportive. Like everybody was just like looking at these ordinals and was like, okay, how can we build stuff with it? Xverse, Hero, Gamma, all of these companies come from Stacks, and yeah, all of them kind of work together to go to ordinals. Also you, also the Stacks Accelerator at that time, now Bitcoin Frontier Fund, like everyone in the space was kind of, oh, ordinals sounds really interesting. Let's do something together and see how we can collaborate to build something that is, yeah, important there.
yeah, I mean, yeah, so it's fortunate that you guys made the right decision, right? Because now you guys are growing fast. I think what is our inscriptions over 22 million or 23 million now, something like that. But with recursion and with some of the upgrades on the ordinals protocol, it's going to create another mini bull run, right? And then you guys are are totally well positioned to pick up on that. It's amazing, right? But I mean, the unfortunate thing is, of course, by you choosing right and being on ordinals, also it means that Stacks NFT, right? It was basically destroyed by ordinals movement. I mean, maybe like you take a look at the on-chain activity, it's probably less than 1% of what it was just a few months ago, right? So yeah, I mean, it'd be painful to think if you had not made that jump into ordinals to L1, right? Yeah, so I mean, it's almost like you guys didn't really know what was, because it's the beginning of a new trend on ordinals, and you guys sort of took a leap of faith, made the right decision.
Yeah, I think it was at that time was like the bear market and volume on stacks really dried up, like even more than before. And then just seeing that something on layer one comes up and like people are doing over the counter trades of like over 7 Bitcoin per ordinal, that was just like mind blowing. And I think really showing that there is demand for it in the space.
Right, exactly.
Because
Like
yeah,
massive demand, massive demand. People with Bitcoin like coming out of the woodwork, right? It's like normally they don't spend their money, but now they are. It's insane. But okay, so let's fast forward. So you guys pivoted to L1, right? Because you guys were trying to raise before it was difficult, but then you pivoted to L1, and then since you guys were first to market, um, and you have a strong team, you guys were able to raise money. Can you sort of share like the journey there before we jump into Q&A here?
yeah. So first step was uh like as I already mentioned, the Bitcoin Startup Lab, to kind of learn about the basics, fundamentals, and so on about fundraising. Obviously, this was like the first part of the journey to just like really get to know for the first time how this startup life works, because that's not something that you learn in school. Um, and then like with this knowledge, the next step for us was to get into the Stacks Accelerator, or now Bitcoin Frontier Fund Accelerator, and kind of hone in on the fundraising itself. Uh, and I think preparing for the demo day, preparing the pitches and everything. And like during that time, with all of the knowledge from both Bitcoin Startup Lab and the Bitcoin Frontier Fund Accelerator, we were able to already like approach investors at that time, try to like talk to them to see like if they think it's a good idea, or also just trying to see like what they think about the ordinal market and so on. I know like the first investor that I approached, they heard about ordinals. This was like in, I think in March, so pretty early on as well. But it was only March. Like ordinals have been around since like 1 year at this point, 1 month at this point. And then I was pitching this, and he was like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool." But ordinals, like that's not something that we really know if it's going to succeed. Like your idea is great, but who knows about ordinals? And then it was kind of like, okay, we need people that are convinced about ordinals right now, that have like they that like people who got that the value in Bitcoin is just so immense, and that something like ordinals will drive development on Bitcoin, which is the blockchain that has the most potential for mass adoption in the whole blockchain industry. So I think that was the next step, to just find out which people are in the same boat with like or on the same page with like, okay, Bitcoin is the like should be the industry standard in some sort. Not trying to be a maxi here, but at the same time, like realizing the value of ordinals. And then from that, it was kind of like with all of the learnings that we had, it was just talking to the people in a natural way, explaining like how, like where we want to go, what we have built, and so on. And then I guess it just made sense for most of the investors we talked to. So yeah, that's how we fundraised.
Nice, nice. And you did it spectacularly. And in the bear market nonetheless. Um, so actually there's one last question I want to ask you before we cut over to questions here. So people listening here on Twitter Spaces, get ready to ask questions here. So like hindsight being 2020 now, I'd like to ask you this question while it's still fresh in your mind, right? Because Ordinals has been around for what, 6-7 months, about half a year, roughly. And there are many companies that saw that, or not many, but there are several that I know that saw Ordinals and they pivoted to Ordinals, right? But not all of them made a successful pivot. Um, I mean, I don't want to like put them on a spot here, but it's pretty obvious that Gamma, the activity before versus now is like completely different. It's maybe like maybe not even 1% of what it was before, right? And it wasn't able to make that jump, whereas you guys were able to make the jump, right? It's two different types of products, of course, but hindsight being 2020, why do you think some people made a jump successfully, whereas others did not?
That's a great question. I think that some companies they didn't focus on ordinals enough. It was like, okay, ordinals is the side project that we're building, and stacks is still our core business, for example. And I think the companies that succeeded were the ones that were like just diving 100% in. For like, I mean, you have a lot of the companies that still have cross-chain products. For example, Magic Eden is like live on ordinals, on Solana, on Polygon, and everything. But they kind of treat their like each chain as like its own product. I think that's really good. And for each chain, they build their own community. So, for example, Magic Eden has their own Twitter account called Magic Eden on Bitcoin. And basically, the team behind this Magic Eden on Bitcoin focuses 100% on the ordinal space. They try to collaborate with all of the major collections. They join a lot of Twitter spaces. They talk to the customers, to the ordinal customers, and so on. It feels like an ordinal native project at this point. And I'm sure they do the same thing for each other chain. So yeah, I guess some companies weren't jumping in 100% and weren't like trying to build a new community in the ordinal space and just instead of just bringing their old community over, or yeah, something like that. I don't know. Maybe I want to ask you the same question. Like, what do you think went wrong with some companies? You probably have a better answer.
There's a few reasons. One, um, those companies didn't have you as a CEO. That's one reason. Okay. Right. You're very flexible, but you're also very decisive. And I completely agree with you. It's a focus, right? If you jump halfway across a chasm, right? If you pull any, if you just like have, if you only use like 90% of your strength, that last 10% is like the part where, people will just not make it to the other side, right? So it is about that, just that commitment. There's almost like a leap of faith there, right? And be able to see that clearly. I think also because maybe they had bigger teams, and like you said, they already had maybe more community, so it's really hard for them to make the cut, even though they were better funded at the time, right? That's one thing. The second thing I think is they didn't have the same training going through the Bitcoin Startup Lab to develop that. People like, we're all flexible to a certain degree, but with the right training, we become more flexible and more decisive, right? Because when we know the science of a startup, then it helps simplify things. So I think that also helped. The third thing is, I believe that they also had a bigger challenge because they were sort of, like you said, like marketplaces. It's obvious. Everyone and their mom wants to do a marketplace on ordinals, right? So they were sort of like, like when you play baseball or when you want to hit a ball, right? In any sport, you don't like aim for the ball. If you aim for the ball, you'll miss it, right? Because it's moving fast. You have to aim in front of the ball, right? And then I think that's the advantage you guys had, was that you guys had the foresight of saying, okay, well, we're not going to aim for the ball because everyone's jumping in on the obvious ones. So why don't we just aim like one step ahead of the ball and do lending, right? And there were a lot less competitors at the time. You know what I mean? So I think that's also part of being a visionary, right? But that goes back to whoops. All right, we just got rugged here. Robin got rugged, but oh shoot, I think he dropped off the Twitter space too, but he's gonna let me text him right now. Okay. Well, while we wait for him, for those of you who are listening in net right now, or you're listening to a recording of this, the Bitcoin Startup Lab is hosting the Bitcoin Olympics hackathon as we speak. And applications are open. It's the biggest hackathon by prizes this year for Bitcoin. We certainly have the biggest agnostic prize at $50,000. This means that no matter what technology you build with, you are eligible for this prize. And we also have a lot of other prizes that are technology specific. So if you want to become part of this and learn from a bunch of awesome speakers, entrepreneurs, Robin and other people will be in panels, helping people think about what is the next big innovation on Bitcoin and help you hack it together during this hackathon. All right, so sign up. You can take a look at the chat here. Sign up to it now. Join the Discord and get in on the action. Hey, Robin, welcome back. Robin, can you hear me? Okay. Not okay. So logged off again, but he's gonna try again here. Oh, here you go, Robin. You're back.
I'm so sorry, my internet cut off. But yeah, I wanted to add to this what you said. Like, yeah, the learning was definitely like a huge contributor. Because like if we didn't know like how to pivot and so on, probably we would also just have like jumped over the chasm like 50%. So yeah, I think this analogy is great, and also yeah, also the learning definitely a big point.
Yeah, but yeah, great job for being a visionary, right? Because a lot of people they sort of, we're talking about, we're using the sports analogy here, right? if the ball's coming at you, you want to hit it. You don't aim for the ball. If you aim for the ball, you'll miss it. You have to aim in front of the ball, right? Because it's moving fast, like the market. So a lot of people were jumping in. There's a lot of competitors jumping in to do marketplaces, right? And whereas you guys said, all right, well, we're not going to fall into that trap. We're going to aim for one step ahead and do lending instead, right? Where it's sort of like the blue ocean, meaning that there weren't that many competitors, so you guys were free also to execute. Right. I think that was a brilliant move as well.
Yeah, love the analogy again. You're really coming up with the best analogies. So many are still in my head from the program, and also this raw steak analogy in the restaurant. I think that's great. I love this until this day. I always use it when we talk about things in the company.
Which one was that? Which one?
Where you said okay, you basically just deliver your customer a raw steak, and then you see how they react, and they probably will tell you like, we want it cooked. So you tell them like, how do you want it cooked? So then they will tell you, and then you will cook it for them. Then they will tell you like, yeah, there is no season on it. We want season on it, and stuff like that. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's the way to go back and forth, right? Iterate towards product market fit. Yeah, that's a great one. That's awesome.
Totally.
Okay, so let's we have like what 15 minutes before you have our stop. Let's open up the floor for questions here. I see Hero Gamer here. I see Rafa here, who's a part of our current cohort. I also see Javar here, G9. Do any of you guys want to ask a question to Robin? Rafa.
Oh, Albert, sorry, I wasn't hearing you. Yeah, I also love your analogies, Albert. They're the best. And I would recommend anyone who is serious about this to really join the pack, because I agree with everything that was said, that the environment, you are the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And this is like, wow.
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, like the mentors and everybody's like world class, baby. Anyhow, I had a really quick question for you, Robin, and just continuing the analogy of like being one step ahead of the game. I hear you on the marketplaces. You guys are like machines. You are really close to your customers, and no doubt you guys are killing it. So I'm thinking, what are the features that you guys plan to roll up next for to satisfy the demand?
Yeah, great question. So I guess that's also again something where, okay, like competition will come. It's a profitable market. That's again something where like you just know what will come, kind of. And then we kind of started like talking to our customers, like what platforms have they used on other chains, and also kind of like looked at the numbers ourselves, looked at the history, like what happened on all of the other chains, because history usually repeats itself, um, at least in a like, I guess, somewhat similar way. And what we saw on like other platforms like Solana and so on is that really the platforms that made it easier for the users were the ones that were getting most of the traction. So with like for Ethereum, we had BentDAO, although BentDAO had like its fair share of issues. And on Solana, we have Sharky, and it just makes lending so much more approachable for most people. And we want to be there as well. We don't want to be like this complicated platform. So the next step for us is kind of making like integrating more rails, so you actually get the product even if you haven't done any lending before. So part of this feature is basically letting lenders create collection offers and kind of putting collections first instead of individual ordinals, because it just makes it way like such a way easier user flow for everyone, and also borrowers can redeem instant loans without having to think about any terms. They just take the best offer and they get it instantly. Yeah, so reducing the number of clicks and also the like number of thought processes, I think is our next step.
Very cool, very cool. Just, upgrading the user experience. I
Yep.
really like your mentality, Robin, because a lot of, I see a lot of companies that are first movers, meaning like they're the first one in their category. They rush in and they get all the users, right? And then it gives them a false sense of security. But they don't realize it's because, well, they're the only product. But because they're sort of like, oh, well, it looks like we're a market leader now, they sort of start relaxing. And then that opens up, that makes them susceptible to attacks. So the second, the third, the fourth startup that comes in, they see what they did well and what they didn't do well. So the next iteration is better than them, right? But you guys are not resting there. You guys are still close to your customers and just thinking about how you guys could create more and more value, and that's the way to stay ahead, right? Being the first to market is only like the first milestone to success. The rest of the success is, how because since you guys are a market leader, you guys have to you're being very honest with yourself. It's almost like shadow boxing, right? When you're the champion, you have to set new goals for yourself, right? Because you're already at the front of the pack. So like by having that kind of discipline, I see that you guys have a very good chance to do something very significant here.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's also like you just have to believe in what you're doing. And I believe that like I want the people to use Liquidium because I believe like what we are doing is something that is good. So we just want to make it as good for the people as possible because we don't want to lose our customer for someone else who is kind of, yeah, I guess there are a lot of people in the space that don't want to do good. So I think I have some sort of like an intrinsic motivation to yeah, this kind of sounds cheesy, but yeah, to not get like some sort of evil corporation who just destroys us and the users are forced to use something else or something. Yeah, that's part of
Yeah,
it, I think.
that's good. That's true to the Bitcoin ethos. Now we have about 9 minutes left here. Does anybody want to ask a question to Robin? Rafa has another question. So if no one else wants to grab this opportunity, like Metapanda, Javar, Hero Gamer, and everybody else, then let's go with Rafa again.
Yeah, thank you, Albert. It was actually a very quick question. I'm curious. I saw a tweet by Trevor of a company basically allowing someone to borrow against an NFT that is backed or represents the ownership of some fancy watch. And so you guys mentioned how important it is to stay focused. So I'm curious, are you guys looking into this stuff? How are you going to continue to be decisive in your decisions?
Great question. So as I said in the beginning, is that like I was initially fascinated by NFTs because not where NFTs are now, but what NFTs actually have, like the opportunities for NFTs down the line. So for us, I think it was always important to build something that like, yeah, if someone finds a way where you can tokenize a Rolex, or you can find a way to tokenize real estate or something, we have the technology that is ready to use all of this. So yeah, we kind of try to stay on top of the market as much as possible and get as many collaborations in as possible to just explore like, okay, what do the users want to use as collateral? What do lenders think is a good form of collateral? And I think ultimately using the broad technology ordinals or using the broad technology NFTs as the collateral allows us to adapt for all future use cases. So yeah, if you have an ordinal that represents the ownership of a watch, you can lend, you can borrow against it on Liquidium. That's kind of the ethos that I think we are trying to build here.
You guys are a lending borrowing platform, right? And you're really smart about focusing on digital or ordinals first, because if it's all in the digital world, it's much scalable. But of course, like the back end technology on the back burner, right? You guys are exploring with different collaborators, right, to see what's the next move to upgrade it once you guys solidify your lead in the pure digital aspect, right? Because yeah, exactly, the next frontier is going to be blockchain connected to the real world.
Yeah, 100%.
So this is like a massive opportunity. It could potentially go to well beyond the billions, because lending, borrowing in general globally, like credit markets, I think last year was what, 200 to 300 trillion with a T, $trillion, depending on how you count it. But it's massive. This is bigger than the top economy GDPs combined, right? So it's lending, borrowing is like no joke. It's and right now it's like nation stages on Bitcoin. I mean, even on Ethereum, they have a head start, but what is it, like 30 something billion is on the TVL, which was 30 billion compared to like 300 trillion. It's like, like not even a fraction. So like the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. I think collateral, like lending. I think the reason why Liquidium is so intriguing to me as an investor is because, lending and borrowing platforms are really only as good as the collateral they're backed on, right? And if I had to choose between one or other, like, okay, if it's an NFT versus an ordinal, well, I'd pick the platform using the ordinal because that's a stronger collateral, right? So very interesting. Great job, man. All right, so Robin, do you have any final words on, there are people who are going to listen to this video after the spaces, and people are thinking about coming into Bitcoin to build. Do you have any encouraging words or words of wisdom to close this off for them?
Yeah, I think I guess my best advice is just to build whatever the heck you want, even if it fails, or if it doesn't fail, even better. But yeah, just be brave and try different things. Try to learn from the best people in the space. Try to join the Bitcoin Startup Lab to just like accelerate your growth. And never stop learning. Always try to reach for the stars.
Super. Thank you for that, Robin. Yeah, definitely. If you do all those, you're already ahead of 99% of the pack, which is what you have to do as a founder, right? You're not really competing with 99%. You're competing with the top 1%. And things like the Startup Lab, meeting people like Robin, right? Just be in the right place, in the right environment. Like what Rafa was saying, you're the sum of the 5 people around you. So just being around talent is just super important for success. With that said, let's close this out. So for you guys watching here, here's what you guys have to look forward to. We're going to have Abdel come on later on this afternoon. He's the founder of Deep Lake, founder of Deep Lake. They create a technology to make DLCs easy DLC APIs. Also, they're powering Robin's Liquidium. And then after that, we have Trevor Owens tomorrow. He wears a lot of hats, but for tomorrow, we're going to dive into his origin story. I'm sure a lot of people are curious about that. And then we're going to end up on what he's doing right now with the Ordinals movement, right? And then his co-creator Leonidas of the Ordinals show will come on after that, and we'll dive into his origin story. And we're going to find out from them why they were able to become first to market to create the Ordinals show, which became a very significant cultural a spearhead to accelerate the advent of the Ordinals movement and Bitcoin economy in general. And then after that, we're going to have the controversial BRC20 creator Domo, right? He's not controversial, but a lot of people have some people love BRC20. Others hate it, but we're going to find out about his origin story and what he has in store for BRC20. And then we have several more people after that. Again, we're going to go for 30 who's who in Bitcoin innovation. And the people we invite up here, they have to have either one, done something for the first time ever on Bitcoin, or they have to set a new record on something that was existing on Bitcoin. So we're just talking about the top of the top. We're going to invite 30 up here over the course of the next 2 months, right? And we're going to have 30 who's who on Bitcoin Innovation 2023. So thank you everyone for listening. Again, this show is brought to you by the Bitcoin Startup Lab. We're a top pre-accelerator in the Bitcoin ecosystem, helping you turn your ideas into investment-worthy startups through community innovation and mentorship. Also, big shout out to our media partners, BTC Inc., parent company of Bitcoin Magazine, the top media on Bitcoin, and Crypto Slate, a crypto agnostic media platform that brings the latest happenings on Bitcoin to the rest of the crypto world. And of course, a big thank you to all of our teams and all the guest speakers that have come together to make this show possible, to inspire more people to accelerate the advent of the Bitcoin economy. So if you guys want to find out how to sign up to the hackathon, how to sign up to the program, go to @BTC Startup Lab. That's our X handle. Shoot, I'm still not used to that X, right? As you know, it's Twitter. X handle @BTC Startup Lab. Okay, thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks for having me, Albert. It was a pleasure and a great show. Looking forward to the new episodes. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining.